Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for holding this hearing on such an important topic, and thanks to all of you for being here to discuss an issue that, unfortunately, affects all of us every day. You know, I served as the Attorney General of my state, and I can tell you that this was the top consumer complaint to my office by far. And just last year, 2018, we had nearly 50,000 complaints in the state of Missouri, 50,000 complaints of illegal telemarketing calls. And many of those came from residents who were signed up on the state's no-call list. As you can imagine, their incredible frustration to understand why in the world they're still getting these calls. As Attorney General, I joined a multi-state coalition of other attorneys general to seek ways to stop and reduce robocalls. And these fraudulent schemes are outrageous violations of privacy, I know firsthand, and frustrate and harm Missourians and Americans on a daily basis. Like many of my colleagues here on the committee, I was proud to co-sponsor the TRACED Act, which passed the Senate in May, and I'm proud to join Senator Collins on the Anti-Spoofing Penalties Modernization Act, which I hope will soon move forward, and I hope that both of these will make a real difference. Mr. Frankel, can I just start with you? I want to come back to the topic that Senator Sinema raised about rural communities. And looking at the stir-shaken authentication technology, a lot of rural carriers still use the legacy, and you were, I think, alluding to this with Senator Sinema, the legacy time division multiplexing TDM networks rather than the voice IP technology. And so am I right in thinking that the stir-shaken authentication technology can't be used by carriers that use TDM networks? Is that right?
In its present form, that's correct, Senator.
And can you just give us a brief description for the layperson as to why those two aren't compatible? Well, or why we should care about that, why that's a problem?
You shouldn't have to care about it. The industry should care about it for you. But in a brief explanation, the TDM technology dates back to the late 1970s, introduced, deployed largely in the early 1980s. It's the same reason that you can't run modern programs on a 20-year-old computer. I mean, these protocols don't work in that old technology. It's good enough to carry telephone calls, but it's not good enough to carry all of the signatures and the encryption data that is associated with this latest stir-shaken.
Got it. What are some other ways then, in your view, that we can protect rural residents and others who use carriers that rely on TDM networks? What can you mentioned stopping these calls up network. I mean, what are some things, what are some solutions for folks who use these networks that we can be pursuing?
Well, I really do believe stopping it up network where the calls do enter our U.S. telecom system, that is the right place to stop them. And that's not dependent on all of the technology down at the customer serving, the consumer serving level, be it rural or otherwise. That's dependent up higher in the system where we have a small number of providers through which the bulk of these calls come. That's where they should be stopped. And the providers down there at the consumer level, I think, should actually be demanding of the rest of the industry upstream, saying, don't send us this garbage. We will not accept it, and we require that you and the people upstream from you, everybody up the chain, needs to be responsible and needs to be diligent and do whatever to stop those calls.
Are there policy steps that we can take, regulatory or otherwise, incentives that we can put in place to help stop these up network?
Well, I think there are certainly encouragement that you can provide to do that. Certainly, I also hear concerns from the industry. You know, we're a very litigious society, and so, for example, providers are concerned that, are we going to get in antitrust trouble if we all agree down at the customer serving level that we won't accept this garbage from up higher? Is somebody going to accuse us of colluding to stop robocalls? Now, I think that's ridiculous, and you're smiling, but I hear that, you know, routinely from people. We need to be very careful what steps we take because we don't want to get in that kind of trouble. I will tell you that I went to a few, having identified a couple of these providers. I called them, engaged with them via email and telephone to say, please, can you stop? And what I got back from two of them was threats that they were going to sue me for fraud and harassment. Can you imagine these providers that are putting millions of calls, garbage calls on the network every day, are telling me that I am acting fraudulently and harassing them?
It's incredible. Thank you, Madam Chair.